A generation ago, a series of Democratic presidents created the Medicare program. From Franklin Roosevelt to President Truman to President Kennedy and to President Johnson. And today, and for the last 4 years, the only reason that Medicare still exists is because the man who is with us today, President Bill Clinton. It is not ancient history to many of the people in this room to remember what America was like before Medicare. It's not ancient history at all. This chart just shows a little bit of it. Before Medicare, only 46% of the people, the seniors in this country, had health care. Today, it's close to, effectively, it's 100% of the seniors in this country that have Medicare and health care coverage. Let's talk about Bob Dole and Medicare for a second. In his own words, I was there fighting the fight. I was one of 12 voting against Medicare in 1965 because we knew it wouldn't work. Bob Dole on Medicare in 1995 in the debate that Congress did. The truth is, we don't have to destroy Medicare as much as Bob Dole and Newt Gingrich want. I got to give Newt one, too, in his own words. And if Newt Gingrich, in his own words, now we didn't get rid of it in round one because we don't think that's the politically smart, and we don't think that's the right way to go through a transition. But we believe it's going to wither on the vine because we think people are voluntarily going to leave it. How many people in this room are voluntarily going to leave Medicare? Not one person. The truth is, and the absolute truth is, they want, and I sit on the subcommittee on health care and the Commerce Committee. I work day and night. I read the bill as opposed to Bob Dole and his platform. I read the health care bill that the Republicans put in front of us. I read the budget that the president had to veto. Those plans destroy Medicare. They create false choices in terms of seniors. They create a voucher system that would force seniors into HMOs. Bill Clinton submitted a balanced budget that preserved Medicare. It can be done. It was done in black and white. We need to preserve Medicare and health care and the values that we care about in this country, not just for ourselves, but for our children, our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren, and our great-grandparents. I give you the governor of our great state who's for it as well, Governor Lorton Child.
Thank you. Thank you, Peter. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Mr. President, I want to welcome you to Sunrise. And Mr. President, this is an appropriate place for you to begin to celebrate the dawn of the 21st century. Because you are here today with many of the people that helped make the 20th century. These are the people that have given of their hopes and their dreams, their prayers, to teach us how we should go forward. And isn't it great to have a president that will listen to some of the people that have been there before, who have worked so hard, who have given of their time. Bill Clinton has stood tall for Florida and all of our older Americans. He's had the courage to stare down Dole and Gingrich and to stand up for all of our people. When the Dole-Gingrich Congress threatened to cut Medicare for 2.5 million Floridians, just so they could give more tax cuts to the wealthy, President Clinton said no. And when the Dole-Gingrich Congress threatened to cut billions of dollars in Medicaid services for Florida's needy, our elders, our children, our disabled, President Clinton said no. And when the Dole-Gingrich Congress wanted to repeal the Brady Law that's keeping guns away from criminals, President Clinton said no. And when Dole and Gingrich say they want to do a U-turn back to the old days of voodoo economics, trickle down, to explode the deficit again, President Clinton says no. And when Dole and Gingrich ask for your votes this fall, just say no. And on November the 5th, we're going to say yes. Yes to secure retirement. Yes to an increased opportunity for all Americans. Yes for safer streets and a better education for our kids. And yes to building that bridge to the 21st century. And remember, it starts right here at Sunrise. That's where the bridge starts. So we're going to say yes to leadership, and we're going to say yes to President Clinton. And now I want to introduce to you Sally Richardville, a great lady, a person that's worked hard for our party, a person that works hard in the union movement, and she's going to introduce the President of the United States. Sally.
This is truly an honor. At no time in my life did I ever think that I would be on the stage with the President of the United States. Many of you in this crowd, I know, I've either helped work in your election or something. And trust me when I tell you, this president means everything to me and to my family. I stand here as part of 4 generations of American women who are able to live proudly and with dignity. My mother holds all the respect that I could ever give to any woman in this world. She made a contract with America. She stood as a partner for my father. She raised 4 children. She paid her bills on time. She voted. She obeyed all the laws. She worked. She needs her Social Security. She needs her Medicare. My mother needs her independence from her children. She needs to feel that she is secure when it's her time to retire. She needs and depends on both Social Security and on Medicare. My daughter and her generation have had the freedom under the law to make responsible choices about their careers, their finances, their bodies, and their independence. My daughter raised my granddaughter as a single parent. She worked 2 jobs to make sure that she could afford to pay for her pre-college education. She pays it every month. To make sure that she has insurance for her and her child. She now works in a company where she has insurance and a decent wage. She can take that insurance if she leaves this company and move it to the next place, thanks to the President of the United States. I'm a representative of the American Union Movement. Thank you. I represent working people in this country. I could have only done this in America, that they let women achieve what I have, and to be single. I own a house. I have a pension. At the present time, I don't have insurance. I am in the process of buying it. I am on the CHIPA board working for other people. I have, the three of us, my mother, my daughter, and I, pass on to my granddaughter's generation the best we could and the best we have experienced, and could only have experienced because of the focus and the vision of the Democratic Party. My granddaughter 14 years ago used to be the centerpiece when she sat in her infant seat. We used to place her in the middle of the table. Everybody in this room, or most, used to play with her and dance with her when we'd take her to the different Democratic functions, and they entertained her and they watched her grow. Julie Morrison said that our grandchildren are our little dividends. He was correct. They're the most precious possession is your children and your grandchildren. We want better than we had for our children. We want our children to have clean water. We want them to have a safe environment. We want them to have a great education. We want them to have a safe workplace. We want them to make decent wages. We want them to have affordable insurance. And we want them to have the opportunities to be and do anything they want. That's what America's all about. My mother says the American dream is to be all you can be, to own a house, and to educate your children. As a working parent, that's not always true, but it's changing. Things are happening. I didn't have a pre-college education plan that my daughter has for her child. We went one time to Boston with my niece who is 3. She pulled out a flag at 3 years old, and she said the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I watched grown adults in a place of business stand with this child and pledge to the flag as proud Americans. That's what this is all about. That's what this president is all about. Only in America could my family have survived and achieved all that they have. I'm proud of America. I'm proud of our president. And ladies and gentlemen, I am proud to present to you our current and our next president of the United States.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you so much. I'll tell you, I just hope you're having as good a time as I am this afternoon. Thank you. Thank you for making me feel so welcome. Thank you, Congressman Deutsch, for your remarks today and for being a steadfast ally for the people of Florida and for our administration the last 2 years. Thank you, Governor Lawton Childs, for your lifetime of service to the people of Florida and the people of the United States, and for your brilliant service as governor. I'm delighted to be here with your Attorney General, Bob Butterworth, your State Insurance Commissioner, Bill Nelson, State Senator Ken Jenney, State Senator Peter Weinstein,
Mayor Effman of Sunrise, Mayor Graham of West Palm Beach, Gloria Jackson, the chair of the Broward County Democratic Party, Sheriff Ron Cochran. I'd like to say a special word of thanks to my friend Jerry McAtee back here, the president of the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, and a great supporter of Medicare. And I'd like to thank the Boyles who own the theater here for welcoming us. Most of all, I'd like to thank Sally and her mother, her daughter, and her granddaughter. Didn't she do a good job? Let's give her another hand. I thought she was great. Thank you. Today, I want to talk to you about how all of us, regardless of our ages, grandchildren, children, parents, grandparents, great-grandparents, great-grandchildren, how we can move forward together to build that bridge to the 21st century I talked about in Chicago last Thursday night. I especially want to talk a little more about health security because I know that one of the keys to enabling our families to succeed at home and at work is finding a way for hardworking people to have that health security, to provide the best possible care for people. And I'd like to talk a little bit about those who get their care from specific health care plans that have certain requirements and standards that may lower the cost but may also raise some questions. You know, we have had a remarkable week and a half. I took that train from West Virginia to the convention in Chicago, and I stopped along the way in places that hadn't seen a passenger train in a long time, and there were thousands and tens of thousands of people all along the route. It was terribly moving. And then, of course, we had a good convention, and then Hillary and I and Alan Tipper Gore set out on our bus tour. We made another 5 states. And I figure we saw in our sets talks about 250,000 people and another 200,000 just along the road or the rails. I never saw so many crowds, people coming out, believing in America again, knowing that we're on the track, knowing that we're on the right track and the right road to the 21st century. And it was very moving. Thanks to the support I have received from others in the Congress and in the administration, we have worked very hard to move this country forward. And compared to 4 years ago, we have 10 million more jobs, almost 4.5 million more homeowners, another 10 million homeowners who refinance their mortgages at lower mortgage rates. Wages are going up for the first time in a decade. We've had record numbers of new businesses in each of the last 4 years, and businesses are growing now, coming into existence at the fastest rate since John Kennedy was president. We have record. We're selling more of our products around the world than ever before. The combined rates of unemployment, inflation, and home mortgages are the lowest in 28 years. I am proud of these things, and you should be too as Americans. For 4 years in a row, the crime rate has gone down. In Tampa, the crime rate fell 20% in 1995. Just for example, I just came from there, so I asked for the numbers on Tampa, and I thought it was an amazing drop. There are 1.8 million fewer people on welfare than there were the day I took office. In Florida, there are over 135,000 fewer people on welfare in the state of Florida alone. Child support collections are up 40% in the nation. In Florida, thank you, Governor Childs, they're up 48% in the last 4 years. Just about 2 weeks ago, maybe 3 now, time's been flying the last few days, I signed a minimum wage bill which raised the minimum wage for 10 million hardworking Americans. It also made the employees and the owners of small businesses all across America, made it easier for them to take out retirement plans and to keep those retirement plans when they move from job to job. Most of our new jobs are being created in small businesses. More and more businesses are coming into existence, going out of existence in this new dynamic economy. We have to make it possible for people to save for their retirement, even if they're in small businesses and even if they change jobs a lot of times. And I'm proud of the fact that we've got legislation now which will make that much, much easier and safer. Another interesting provision that Governor Childs and I were talking about with his daughter up in Tampa that was in the minimum wage bill is that we provided a $5,000 tax credit to people who will adopt children. There are tens of thousands of children out there who need a home, and I hope this will help more of them find it. In late 1994, there's one other thing I want to mention here that was done that didn't achieve a lot of notice because it was a part of a big trade bill. But we passed a provision to strengthen the protection for pensions that protected the integrity of 40 million Americans' pension, people already retired and people saving for their retirement, to make sure that these funds are not raided. And one of the things that I vetoed in that budget that Congressman Deutsch talked about, in addition to the cuts in Medicare and Medicaid and education and the environment, was a provision which would have allowed $15 billion to be taken out of existing pension funds and put to other purposes, and I thought that was wrong. I think we ought to keep the integrity of our pension systems in this country. Let me say to a lot of you who may have grown up in an earlier time when we thought more about balancing our books, except when there was an emergency, I'm very proud of the fact that our administration is the first administration since the 1840s, before the Civil War, to have the deficit go down in each of the 4 years of its term. It's been cut by 60%. So compared to 4 years ago, we're in better shape. But as I said last week, and I say again, there are many things we need to do to build a bridge to the 21st century that keeps the American dream alive for all of us, that enables people to succeed in their family lives and at work, that brings us together across all the lines that divide us, that keeps us the strongest country in the world for peace, freedom, and prosperity. Earlier today when I was in Tampa, I had a chance to go to a wonderful high school and speak to over 2,000 students there about our goals for education in the next 4 years. I want to mobilize an army of reading tutors so that instead of having 40% of our 8-year-olds who cannot read on their own in 4 years, every single 8-year-old will be able to read a book on his or her own. I want to make sure that every young child in America in school, without regard to their race, their income, where they have to live, from the poorest urban school districts to the most remote mountain school districts, will for the first time in the history of America have access to the same information in the same time, at the same quality as the children in the wealthiest districts do, by hooking all the classrooms up to the internet, to the information superhighway, with adequate computers and trained teachers. We can do it for the first time in history. And I want to make sure that we put a college education within reach of every family. In the last 4 years, we've worked hard to increase scholarship funds for needy students. We've worked hard to reform the student loan program so that now it works faster and costs less than ever before. I remember Governor Childs and the legislative leaders had me to, invited me to speak to the Florida legislature up in Tallahassee. I had a very moving experience with a young couple there who had both graduated from medical school and who were doing their residency. And, you know, doctors don't make any money when they're residents. And they owed well over $100,000 on their education. And because we had changed the law, which said that young people could pay back their loans as a percentage of their income and never be required to pay back more than that in any given year, these young people were able to avoid literally having half of their income go to their college loan repayment, and they wouldn't have had enough left to live on. We should never have anyone drop out of any level of education because of that burden. And I want to do more. A lot of you can empathize with this. It's no longer possible for people to say they're through with education when they graduate from college. And now we know when people graduate from high school, chances are better than 50-50. They will not be able to find a job with a growing income. So what I want to do in the next 4 years, within 4 years, is to make 2 more years of education the equivalent of at least a community college degree, just as universal as a high school diploma is today, by giving a tax credit for the price of the tuition to the families of this country, so we can pay for it dollar for dollar through tax cuts, and everybody can at least get a community college education. I think that's very important. I'm well aware that the largest community college in the United States is not very far from here. But nearly every American is within driving distance of a community college. And more, the people you see at our community colleges are older students, non-traditional students. The average age at a lot of our community colleges is bumping 30 now. And they have people in their 50s there, in their 60s there, people who've lost their jobs, who have to go back and get new education and training. So I say to you, we ought to have that tax credit for the cost of a typical tuition at a community college, and I believe we should have a tax deduction worth up to $10,000 a year for any tuition costs at any post-high school education in the country to help people educate themselves. It will make our country stronger. So I hope you'll help me build that bridge to the future for the younger part of the families that are here. Thank you. But we also have to keep this economy going strong. You know, whenever we argue about, well, how are we going to pay for Medicare or Medicaid or Social Security or whatever, part of it always assumes certain things about the strength of the American economy. What will the unemployment rate be? What will the incomes be? What will the growth be? We have to keep this economy going strong, and we can grow it even faster. But if we're going to do that, we have to keep investing in the things that make us strong, like education, research, environmental technology. And we have to keep bringing this deficit down. Every time I leave Washington, for the last 4 months, some expert has said, now, Mr. President, don't go down there and talk about the deficit. People really cared about the deficit when the economy was bad. But nobody really understands it very well, and so they don't care about it once the economy gets better. It's boring to them. Don't talk to them about that. Well, I don't believe that. I think you do care about whether your country is spending itself into debt. And let me just briefly say why everyone should care about it. Because as our Republican friends said last year, they put out a paper on this, not me, but I agree with them. They said, if we were not on a plan to a balanced budget, if we went back to permanent high deficit spending the way we did in the 12 years before I came here, interest rates would go up 2%. Why? Because the government would be borrowing money and you would be borrowing money, and we'd both be trying to borrow the same money, so the price would go up. Now what that means is 2% on a home mortgage, on a car payment, on a credit card payment every month. It means 2% more for business borrowing, which undermines the ability of businesses to borrow money and invest, to be more productive, to give their workers raises and hire more people. It's harder to borrow money to start a new business. This is a big deal, folks. We have got to keep this economy growing and going strong, and every tax cut I talked about is paid for dime by dime, line by line. We don't want to go back to the old days where someone says, hey, I'm running for office and I'll give you a big tax cut. No, I can't pay for it, and yes, it'll increase the deficit, and oh, by the way, I'll have to cut Medicare and Medicaid and education and the environment even more than last time. That's what their proposal is, this across-the-board thing. Don't go for that. We went down that road before. We would have a surplus in the budget today, and I could have a bigger tax cut or extend the life of Medicare with no sweat for another several years, a surplus today, if it weren't for the interest we're paying on the debt run-up in just the 12 years before I became the president. We don't want to make that mistake again. We dare not make that mistake again. And I don't think you want to make that mistake again. Every time I come to Florida, someone talks to me about personal security. I'm proud of the fact that the crime rate's come down for 4 years in a row. I want it to keep coming down. And that means we have to finish the work of putting 100,000 police on the street. It means we ought to pass a law that expands the Brady Bill, which now covers anybody who's been convicted of a felon or as a fugitive or stalker cannot get a handgun. I think that should extend to anyone who has beaten up a child or a spouse at home. I don't believe people who are involved in domestic violence should do that. And I believe thank you. I believe that we should ban those terrible cop killer bullets. They have no purpose other than to shoot police officers. If the police officers are willing to protect us, we ought to be willing to protect them. It's a simple thing, and it has nothing to do with hunting or sportsmen. I believe that we have to build a bridge to the 21st century that works on building even stronger families. That's why I've said that the family leave law that I signed, the first bill I signed, has made it possible for 12 million American families, intergenerationally, just like these fine women up here. 12 million families, where someone in the family could take some time off without losing their jobs for the birth of a baby or the illness of a parent. It's been a great thing for America, and it has not hurt the economy. And I would like to see it extended. I would like to see it extended in a narrow way to say you can also take a little time off to take your child to the parent-teacher conference at school or your parent to a regular doctor's appointment as well, in case there are serious problems that can't be dealt with. I want to see us stand up for the environment and prove we can grow the economy and protect the environment more into the 21st century. You know, I talked about this the other night, but I want to say it again. It's appalling to me. It's appalling to me that we still have 10 million American children living within 4 miles of toxic waste sites. Now, we've cleaned up more of those in 3 years than the previous administrations did in 12, but we're not doing enough. We have to do more. And so I propose just in the next 4 years to clean up 500 more, the 2/3 worst of those sites, so that we can say that our children are going to grow up next to parks, not poison. And I hope you'll help me with that. And here in Florida, I can say I'm very proud of the fact that in the first 4 years, we saved national parks from an ill-advised scheme to sell some of them off. We negotiated an end to a proposed gold mine at Yellowstone National Park, the crown jewel of America's whole natural history. We created the largest national park south of Alaska and the Mojave Desert in California. And I hope in the next 4 years we will complete the work of saving the Florida Everglades. And I hope you will help us do that. Thank you. Thank you. Now let's talk about health care. There are few issues that tie people together as closely as health care, all across the ages. The other night when the First Lady spoke at the Democratic Convention and said that we strongly supported a bill that says that you cannot kick a mother and her newborn child out of a hospital sooner than 48 hours. I believe that the grandmothers and the great-grandmothers and the great-grandfathers and the grandfathers were among those cheering the loudest in America. Of course these hospitals have to save money. Of course we want to cut unnecessary costs. Of course some people are healthy and fine and there's no problem. But it ought to be a decision that the doctor can make based on what is best for the mother and the baby, and people should not be put on the street if they're not ready. When we launched a remarkable effort to dramatically increase the rate of immunizations of children up to the age of 2 so that more of them would live and live healthy lives. I think the grandparents were among those who cared the most about it. And when I was saying, look, we don't want to balance the budget in a way that not only cuts too much out of Medicare and Medicaid, but fundamentally changes the system, that was as big a problem. that creates a two-tier system of Medicare where if you happen to be older or poorer or sicker at the time the changes are made, the chances of you're falling into second-class health care are overwhelming. Or that changes the whole system under Medicaid so that there's no longer a guarantee for people who have middle-class lifestyles to get some help for their parents in nursing homes. Or people who have middle-class lifestyles who have children with disabilities to get some help with those children so they can keep them at home and still keep their jobs and not go broke. I don't believe that's an age-specific area. I think that we all care about that. On the other hand, I don't agree that you can't do anything to try to save money in these programs to save them. Everybody wants us to save Medicare. Everybody knows that we're all living longer and staying healthier. And that's good, isn't it? I mean, I think that's pretty good. So when somebody tells me, Mr. President, we got this terrible problem with Medicare, since the inflation per person is not going up, it's just that people are living longer, and the longer you live, the more health care you lose. To me, that's a high-class problem. I mean, I don't understand all this hand-wringing. That's a high-class problem. We got people living longer and being healthier and hanging around and doing things. I think that's a pretty high-class problem. I don't understand why everybody is going around like Chicken Little. Oh, the sky is falling. We have problems in Medicare because everybody's living. I thought that was the object. Do you know? I thought that was the point of the deal. I think do you know, if you live in the United States, this is very interesting. In 1985, because of Social Security and SSI, for the first time in the history of our country, people over 65 had a lower poverty rate than people under 65. And because of Medicare and Medicaid, and because of the things you can buy into with them, now, if you live to be 65 in the United States, we have the highest life expectancy of any country in the world among people who live to be 65 going forward. Our overall life expectancy is slightly lower, unfortunately, because we have higher rates of violence that take out too many of our children, because our maternal care programs are not as good as they should be, and because we have a disproportionate number of people compared to a lot of other countries with very serious illnesses. But if you live to be 65, you are in the country with the highest life expectancy for seniors in the entire world. Now, we know what did that. I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that's a good thing. This is a high-class problem, this Medicare problem. So, I proposed, and I told everybody, all the advocates for the senior groups came in, we worked with them. We proposed larger savings, substantive savings over a 6-year period in Medicare and Medicaid than any president ever had. The only problem was I was trying to save the programs. I was trying to be fair. I wasn't trying to balance the budget on your back or make you pay for somebody else's tax cut or do something that would give us an excuse to walk away from our commitments under Medicare and Medicaid. So I say to you, the first thing we ought to do in going forward is to remember what the Hippocratic Oath says. First, do no harm. Let's not do something we don't have to do. Let's do as much as we have to do to save the programs. But let's not do something we don't have to do that would make it unfair to those who depend upon them. We can, I'll say again, just like Congressman Deutsch said, we can clearly balance the budget and dramatically extend the life of the Medicare Trust Fund without the level of cuts in Medicare, Medicaid, education, and the environment in the budget that I vetoed last year. My door is still open to the Congress, even as they meet now in September, to try to reach an agreement on that. But I will not do anything that will cause us to harm people who have justifiably depended on this when this program is working. And the problem we have is the very problem we've been trying to create for 30 years, ever since we created it, which is we hope people would live longer and be healthier and be stronger. We can fix it, but we don't want to destroy it. Second thing I want to say is, as we provide people more options in Medicare and more options in Medicaid and take steps that will further slow the rate of inflation and give people attractive options to be in managed care programs of various kinds, we ought to do it, again, in a way that really creates a win-win situation, and we can do that. I'm prepared to give Governor Childs and all the other governors in the country greater flexibility in how they administer the Medicaid program. But I don't think we should walk away from the populations, pregnant women and their poor young children, families with disabilities, and the seniors. I don't think we should do that. I think we should stay in there and serve those populations. In our balanced budget program, we actually also propose to do some things that we think will be very good for the economy. A lot of families, for example, are caring for parents with Alzheimer's. It's a painful, difficult thing. It's also a great labor of love. If a family is doing that and saving the system money by doing it, I think we ought to provide some way for them to get some respite care for those who are caring for Alzheimer's people in their own homes. And that's an example of something that I think would be a good thing to do that will actually save money to the larger health care system and enable families, again, to make it at work and to make it at home and to keep that close-knit bond that we all value so much. I think we are going to have to crack down even harder on those who rip the Medicare system off. We have I will say this, I hear more about it in Florida than any place else, I guess, because more of you know about it, but you should know that we've saved more than $15 billion in 3 years. We have strengthened the requirements and our tools for dealing with it, and Governor Childs has done a better job of dealing with it than any other governor in the country, in my opinion, so we're doing our best. 2 weeks ago, I had the great privilege, as has already been said in my introduction, of signing the Kennedy-Casaubon bill, which is the most significant health care reform in a generation. The bill guarantees that working people can keep their health insurance if they change jobs. It gives self-employed business people a better tax break to buy insurance, just like those who work for big firms. It means you don't lose your health insurance if you or somebody in your family gets sick. What it means is that up to 25 million Americans might be able to get or keep health insurance now when they couldn't do it before. It is a very good bill. But we have to do more. You don't want to say to some people, we have created a right for you, and it's like saying, well, we've all got a right to go buy a Jaguar. So my next proposal is, and this again is paid for in my balanced budget, that we help workers and their families who are in between jobs to keep their health insurance for up to 6 months so they don't lose it while they're changing jobs. This could help to bring peace of mind to 3 million Americans a year, including 700,000 children. It is paid for in my balanced budget, and it's long overdue. I also think we have to do more to give our people the assurance that they'll get the quality they are paying for and that they deserve. That's why I'm supporting the legislation I mentioned dealing with not forcing new mothers and their newborns out of the hospital. And that's why I believe we should extend consumer protections to the 140 million Americans who are now enrolled in managed care health plans. These plans, let me talk a little bit. These plans on balance have given most people who are in them high quality care with more choices at lower cost because they are in various ways managed care plans, the HMOs, the PPOs, and the others. But we have to make sure that the changes that are being made do not lead to a decline in the quality of health care. Now, I can tell you, I've spent years studying this now as a governor and as president, and I am convinced that the right kind of managed care can really be the best of all worlds, can give more choices to consumers, can give people more chances to make decisions that are right for them, can keep the cost of health care down, and still maintain very high quality. I'm also convinced that if they're not the right kind of plans, some bad things can happen, especially by not giving managed care customers all the information they need. Too often, too many health care plans are literally gagging their doctors, their nurses, and other professionals by stopping them from telling patients about all their treatment options, because some of those options that may be best for the patients may be more expensive for the plan, since the patient has already paid the flat rate. So I want to say to you that I think this has to stop, and this is my announcement for the day. But there is a bipartisan bill that's been introduced into Congress, sponsored by Representative Ed Markey, a Democrat, and Representative Greg Gansky, a Republican, that will help to protect doctors, nurses, and patients. It's called the Patient Right to Know Act, and it says that the professionals cannot be gagged from giving you the information you're entitled to, and cannot be punished if they give it to you, so that we'll have the best of all worlds. Managed care plus consumer protection. And will you help me pass that bill? Thank you. Again, I want to be clear. There are an awful lot of HMOs, PPOs, and other health care plans that give patients very good care at good value, even better value with more choices and less inflation in the health care premiums. But we have to make sure that we don't give up the quality of care. Doctors just must not face discrimination when they uphold their oath to give patients the best care. Patients should feel safe in the knowledge that they have been given the full story of what all their treatment options are and what are best for them. They should be told about the best treatment, whether it's the cheapest or not. There's also more to do. There are millions of Americans who are affected by the changes in our health system, which ought to feel comfortable about the health care they received. I have asked our Secretary of Health and Human Services, Donna Shalala, our Labor Secretary, Bob Reich, to form an advisory commission about the quality of care for health care consumers, with health care providers, health plans, consumers, business people, all on a bipartisan basis, everybody having their story heard, but to evaluate the ways that health plans can best serve their customers over the long run, so that we can have a health care system we can afford and one we can be proud of, because it keeps life expectancy going up and it keeps the health of our people improving. The Vice President, I have asked to review this report because he's done such great work in other areas where we've tried to reinvent our government and improve things. And what we're trying to do is to understand how these changes in the healthcare system are going to affect America's families, all generations of families, yours, mine, everyone else's. What are the financial implications? What are the healthcare implications? What else should we do? But I am confident that being for a consumer's right to know is the right thing to do here. And I am confident, I will say again, I am confident that we can find a way to preserve the Medicare program in a way that gives you more options, keeps it affordable, and doesn't divide it into a two-tier system where the elderly in our country, who happen to be the oldest or the poorest or the sickest, wind up getting the short end of the healthcare stick. I don't think any one of you want that, and I'm going to do my best to avoid that. We can do what we need to do. All of this is a way of building a bridge to the future. I believe that we have to make it possible, let me say again, for families across the generations to succeed at home and at work, to honor the obligations to parents and children, and still be successful in the workplace and as citizens. I believe we can do that. I believe we can do it if we build the right kind of bridge to the future, including the health care reforms I have discussed today, and I hope that every one of you will help me and yourselves and your children to build that bridge. Thank you, and God bless you all.